Today, as El Paso County is in the midst of moves to consolidate many of its citizen services into an efficient and convenient new center on Garden of the Gods Road, a look back at the first 50 years of El Paso County reveals that even in the very early days, it was necessary to move and change to meet the needs of a growing community. Back in February of 1861, in the early days of the Pikes Peak Gold Rush, Colorado officially became a territory, and the history of El Paso County begins just a few months later.
Counties were created by the first legislature of Colorado Territory, and El Paso County, which included then what's now Teller County, was formed in November 1861.
At the time, Colorado City, now Colorado Springs' Old West Side neighborhood, was the most heavily populated area in the county. There were about 200 homes.
So Colorado City was founded here to be a supply base and a kickoff point to go into the mountains and find your gold, up Ute Pass.
With the largest population, it was the natural choice for the county seat.
The original plat was from 13th Street, today on Colorado Avenue, to about 32nd Street. It was 2 miles long, mile wide, 1,280 acres.
But many of those who were seeking great fortune in the gold fields of Cripple Creek and Victor soon learned that easy money was hard to find. So they turned to farming to feed their families and sold the excess to those still working the mines.
And the Fountain Valley, all the way down, was moist enough to farm.
The first county commissioners, Melanthicum Beach, Henry Clark, and A.D. Sprague, were appointed by Governor William Gilpin. The group only met once, and that was in a retail store.
And the first meeting was in the Tappan building, which is today, the location is the northwest corner of 28th and Colorado Avenue.
A few weeks later, El Paso County had its first elected county commissioners. A.D. Sprague, Benjamin Crowell, and John Bly were voted into office. Their meetings were held in the former Commissioner Beach's office, which was located at what is now 27th and Colorado Avenue. 1862 was El Paso's first full year as a county. Revenue from county taxes was modest.
The county commissioners collected $138 that year of 1861 in taxes and spent $105. The needs were to survey the road to Canyon City.
And then, just as now, law enforcement and public safety dominated the county budget.
They also had to pay board for the prisoners, reimburse those who took up arms and that they were volunteers, and they had to be reimbursed.
As the county commissioners were getting settled into their new jobs, things were not very settled in Colorado City. Residents were having serious trouble with surrounding Indian tribes, and violence broke out right in the middle of what is now Cascade Avenue.
The Arapaho were kind of on the warpath, and they came here, and where downtown Colorado Springs is right now, they're on Cascade Avenue, they came across the two Robbins boys, and the Robbins boys were 8 and 12, and they were in Shook's Run area. Okay, and they were tending their parents' cattle. And the mother saw all this happening, and the Indians went down, speared, killed, did not scalp. We still have descendants of that family, and they weren't scalped. That was a really bad thing. And their bodies were laid out in the cabin that is now in Bancroft Park.
By 1866, the commissioners made the decision to move from Commissioner Beach's office to a bigger building. They rented the Francisco House, a one-story frame structure, for $6 a month. It was located at what is now 2528 West Colorado Avenue. But in 1869, after Irving Halbert was elected county clerk and recorder, he found the Francisco House a little too chilly to efficiently carry out the duties of his office.
And the ink would freeze in the inkwell. So Irving Halbert asked the commissioners to rent this cozy cabin, which is the cabin in Bancroft Park still today.
The Garvin cabin stood at 2610 West Colorado Avenue. Historians tell us it was here, in the Garvin cabin, where Colorado Springs founder General William Jackson Palmer struck up a friendship with Irving Halbert in 1869. As clerk and recorder, Halbert knew all the property and owners in the area and had some insight into their finances. Palmer found him an important ally as he sought to establish his new city.
He got Irving Halbert to be the front man to buy up the 10,000 acres that became Colorado Springs, from Limit Street, which still exists, to the east.
And in 1871, Colorado Springs was founded, with the first stake being driven in on the southeast corner of Pikes Peak and Cascade. A year later, one of Palmer's investors in the new city of Colorado Springs decided the new city would be the center of things and ought to be the home of county government.
Got a petition up to basically have a vote over the county seat. Palmer wanted to steal the county seat from Colorado City, and this was big stuff. And so the election was held in 1872, and it failed. That is, Colorado City outvoted Colorado Springs.
With a victory to keep the county seat in Colorado City under their belts, the commissioners were once again faced with the need for more space to meet the growing needs of a growing county.
So Anthony offered the services of John Langmuir to build a new courthouse. He argued a building 25 feet by 45 feet would be too small, and if they agreed to make it 32 feet by 50 feet, he would build it for $2,500.
Some people in the community thought a $2,500 price tag for the new building was too much, and one of the three county commissioners agreed with them.
Commissioner Matt France argued that such an expenditure would have to be put to the vote of the people. And Commissioner McShane and Woodbury disagreed. The argument was continued, and finally he was outvoted, and so they awarded it.
But as they hurried to get the new building completed before the next election, there was one important facility overlooked. There was no outhouse in the original $2,500 proposal.
So they then went to the Gazette-Telegraph, and on the 8th of July, the bids were opened, and the Walsh brothers were awarded the contract for the low bid of $395.
But Colorado Springs was growing, and so were the number of citizens who thought it should be the seat of county government rather than Colorado City. So it was once again put on the ballot, and this time a host of colorful characters came out to oppose the move.
Judge Baldwin, he'd once judged a sheep contest out in the Templeton area, and he would come to Colorado City. He had been chased down on the same day that the Robbins boys were killed and laid out. Was shot through the jaw, and they started to scalp him, but he'd been scalped once before already in South America, so they let him go for superstition.
Judge Baldwin, whose name lives on as a popular restaurant inside the Antlers Hotel, was not a fan of the wealthy folks from back east who are attracted to General Palmer's somewhat prim and proper new city.
He said, because you can't get a smile in Colorado Springs, and besides there's Shakespeare clubs running all over the place.
But even with the new courthouse now completed in rowdy Colorado City and Judge Baldwin's outspoken campaign against the move, the voters decided to move the El Paso County seat to Colorado Springs. The Colorado City Courthouse, which had been built cheaply but not necessarily well, was given to School District 1.
It was so rickety that when the wind blew, the Board of Education in Colorado City would go into and sit in the classrooms so that the teachers were not too frightened that the building would be blown over.
With the voters' decision to make Colorado Springs the seat of El Paso County government, the county commissioners moved into a rented courthouse near the corner of Pikes Peak and Tejon for $125 a month. And in 1878, the county built what was to be a temporary courthouse on the corner of Kiowa and Nevada. But El Paso County offices remained in that temporary courthouse for 25 years, until the 1903 El Paso County Courthouse, now known as the Pioneers Museum, was constructed.
County commissioners at the time decided they wanted to create a building that really made a statement and could be in their mind at least, be used as a permanent structure for the courts.
But the plan was not without controversy, and the commissioners heard from some outspoken critics before ground was broken in 1899.
So the legal community wanted the courthouse in North Park, what we now call Acacia Park, because it's closer to where most of the attorneys lived.
The site of the 1903 El Paso County Courthouse was called South Park. The land was owned by the city of Colorado Springs.
And the agreement was that as long as this building was used as a courthouse, that agreement would stand. If it ever stopped being used as a courthouse, there was a reverter clause that would send the property essentially back to the city.
Citizens were also upset by the choice of architect, Augustus J. Smith. Smith was unknown to the community, and the commissioners had not used a competitive bidding process for the job.
Architects didn't like that. They wanted an open competition and a chance for everybody to have a shot at it.
What didn't cause controversy at the time was paying for the new building. It was built at a time of great affluence in El Paso County.
Colorado Springs was notable at the time for having more millionaires per capita than any place else in the country.
Colorado Springs was the supply center, providing the goods and services needed to support the gold mines in Cripple Creek and Victor. And it was also attracting wealthy health seekers who wanted to get away from the air pollution that darkened the skies over East Coast cities.
This building was built and paid for with cash. There was no debt. It's almost unheard of today. You could not imagine building a building of this size and this complexity without going into debt. That was possible because of generous individuals in the community.
There was enough cash to pay for almost everything.
There was always a plan for an elevator in this building, but the county couldn't afford it when they first opened it. And so it had to wait a full decade, after the opening of the building for them to be able to afford to install the elevator.
Which is still in use today. The building was completed and county offices moved in 1903. It served the needs of the county elected officials as well as the courts until 1961. And we'll talk more about that in our presentation on the second 50 years.